Welcome to stage 5 and the final stage of the resolution game. In this 5th stage, you will finally resolve from the negative aspects of the archetypes, releasing yourself from any conflict and self-contempt that plagues your conscience, where you can transmute the psychological karma into dharma, which is to say, flip the dark into light, the negative into positive, so that the trouble aspects of your mind can be resolved with peace. This can be achieved in a 3-step process of absolution. Step 1 is to find acceptance and forgiveness from the regrets, guilts and shames that are associated with the past and present actions of the archetype. Step 2, you will transmute the detrimental aspects of the archetype into beneficial assets. And with step 3, you will conclude the process by creating a new soul covenant that affirms a peaceful alliance with the different parts of your psychology. Let's first discuss the meaning of acceptance. Most of us struggle to accept certain aspects of who we are and what has happened in the past, and it's because we find the absolute truths, the mistakes, the guilt, the regrets, the wrongdoings and the shames just too intolerable to live with. We struggle to accept into our conscious awareness these aspects of our life that we have self-condemned as being tainted, inferior and unworthy. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing. It is a natural human response to dismiss the worst of something in preference for the better. We all want to be the strong puppy and not the runt of the litter. So therefore we choose to express what we think are the superior parts of self, then reject and conceal those parts of self that we think are unworthy of expression. Now, the inside work that you have done so far has been you exposing the unworthy aspects of self. Even so, to acknowledge that the unworthy parts of yourself exist, as you've already done with the self-explorative exercise, does not mean that you absolve from their detriments. The acknowledgement of self does not equal the acceptance of self, which means we can be fully aware of the unworthy aspects of who we are and yet still disapprove of and feel deeply troubled by them. The parts of self that we've deemed unworthy and therefore unacceptable are so because they've become unforgivable parts of ourself and life. We can't forgive ourselves for the pain that this part has caused. We can't forgive the circumstances of which this part exists. We can't forgive others for their role in vilifying or victimizing this part. We can also feel that others can't forgive us for the harm that this part has caused them. The unforgiven parts of self are condemned to the gallows of self-loathing, taken down below into the basement of unconsciousness. We lock away the despised parts of the self within the shadowy dungeons of unawareness, where those condemned parts of self will peer through a small slot in the cell door with a crooked and unsympathetic eye, taking scorn of the joy and laughter which is to be seen in the world outside, where the darkness and hurt within cannot appreciate that which is seen to be free and happy without. That which cannot be accepted and forgiven about oneself will either spend its time on remand with self-doubt or be judged guilty by self until proven innocent. With self-doubt, the mental jury is unable to deliver a clear and decisive verdict, and thus continuously mulls over the evidence of one's own character, toing and froing between, am I to blame or not? Am I right or wrong? Do I deserve this punishment or not? With a final self-judgment, there has been a finite conclusion that I will always be like this, where one has thrown away the key, guaranteeing arrested development and not self-development. What you must know is this: you can't redeem your character when using self-derogatory terms. Each time we think of and speak about the ill ways in which an unworthy part of who we are is somewhat jinxed, broken, or faulty, or we condemn what we've done as being beyond salvage, then we continue to nail our dignity to the painstaking crucifixion of mental anguish. We sadly condemn the soul as being irredeemable. Right now, I want you to think about how you, openly or secretly, chastise yourself about the shortcomings of who you are or what you've done. And think, does this evidence of what happened to this part of you actually give you a full and honest disclosure? Could it be that you've returned a guilty verdict on this part of you without proper investigation? Because we do often self-prosecute without sufficient evidence and without fair consideration. When we do condemn parts of ourself, they form limited beliefs, which then become these insecure blights on the character. We see this part of who we are as being incompetent of achieving anything of greater worth. And therefore, as within, so without, we will only ever be confident enough to go after that which we feel worthy of. If there are things that you desire and yet they are missing from your life, it's because there is a part of you that feels unworthy of its achievement, and this holds you back from taking action to achieve it. That said, character blights do begin to fade away once you accept the fact that you are a fallible human with indelible flaws. When you realize that you can only make progress by doing the best with who you are, what you know, and what you've got right now. When you accept that your desires are procured from a place of you feeling unsure, insecure, incompetent, and unworthy as you move towards them, then, and only then, once you accept this, will you be more at ease with being inferior as you try to obtain something that is superior. When accepting that your life journey at times will be testing and difficult to maintain integrity and composure, you can forgive that which brings out the worst of you. When accepting things will never always work out the way you planned and expected, you can forgive yourself when falling short of ideals. When accepting that you won't always spring out of bed with Mr. Bluebird on your shoulder, you can forgive yourself for being that grumpy little sod that stares back at you in the morning in the mirror. Facetiousness to one side, it is impossible to escape the facts, but not impossible to accept the facts. The most important fact that you can accept is that every life experience has both a positive and negative element. When embracing the dualistic quality of life, you will come to the sharp realization that you can rebalance all the areas of your life that have been condemned as being inferior, unworthy, and tainted by finding the positive quality within them. With a dualistic mentality, you can embrace the fact that both the inferior and superior parts of oneself can peaceably exist and express within the same space at the same time. You can embrace the fact that you can never be a rose without the thorns. You can entertain the fact that both savageness and serenity can live side by side. You can welcome the fact that dark and light can assimilate, and dare I say, you can even become a Diablo with a halo. You can even appreciate your historical blemishes as being these vital parts of what makes you that one-of-a-kind vase. You are a distressed masterpiece that exudes the antique beauty of time gone by. Whereas the parts of oneself that you don't accept and forgive will always have the self-sabotaging power of doubt, conflict, and contempt over you. Therefore, unshackle the heavy chains of self-condemnation and reclaim your power by accepting and forgiving the parts of the self that you have long since blamed, disapproved of, or loathed even. Give peace a chance with self-compassion. Get to a place where you can look in the mirror and say to yourself, all is forgiven. Only then will the darkness of a troubled mind subside as the lightness enters your heart. And here is a caveat to the process of acceptance and forgiveness. When we've caused harm to others, family and friends, it may not be feasible to exonerate from the regrets, guilt and shames of what we've done. Sometimes it's best not to agitate old wounds that are too deep and fresh to heal. Sometimes it's best not to muddy up the clearness of now when the troubled waters are way beyond the bridge. Sometimes the circumstances do not allow us to get closure from the second party. Sometimes they won't or they cannot forgive. Self-acceptance and self-forgiveness, therefore, is the ultimate compensation for absolution and closure. We can obtain inner peace without needing to involve others. As within, so without, once you've absolved yourself from the self-judgments of regret, guilt and shame, there is no judgment that can ever be cast over you to which you have not already cast over yourself and since cast away. When you've found peace within, everything without then becomes acceptable and forgivable, even that which was once intolerable. You simply cannot bear a grudge towards that which you have already let go of yourself. Letting go of the afflictions within is to no longer be resonant with afflictions without. You have resolved and transmuted your energy to a higher place. Letting go, however, does have a ruthless and cold-hearted quality to it. Unbegrudgingly, we must look at the past, briefly wince at the carnage behind, and then readjust the rearview mirror before saying, oh well, what's done is done. Then drive forward without paying too much attention to what's left behind. Behind you is the past, and the past is over. It does not serve you to continue suffering with the anxiety of what's been. You've been who you've been. There's no use dragging that has been around. That said, the first hurdle of letting go is the most uncomfortable stretch, which is to let go of not being able to let go. Some of us have grasped on so tight for so long that we can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to live without the stress and the sorrow of that which has defined a huge part of our character's history. To let go would be like the death of who we are and what we've known. To let go would require you to step into the unknown. The difference between those who do absolve themselves to start afresh with a new life journey and those who continue holding on to the shadows of their past is the willingness and knowingness of how to let go. What follows next is an absolution process that guides you to accept, forgive, and let go of the limiting characteristic traits of the archetypes so that you can find peace and unity within yourself, where you will truly know what it feels like to be free of any mental burden. And this can be achieved with the following 4-step process. Let's start with the first step, where you will find acceptance and forgiveness. In this first step of absolution, you are looking to do 2 things. 1, explore the parts of the archetype in your life that you have condemned as being unworthy in terms of causing harm to you and others. Number 2, find plausible reasons to accept and forgive this part of you. So, remaining focused on the problematic traits of the archetypes that you've already identified and worked on in the previous stages, take each individual archetype through the questioning process that follows. Now I want you to open up a fresh page in your journal and write today's date, followed with the title Absolution of name of archetype. The following absolution questions that we will go through together will guide you to clarify exactly where you have condemned this part of you, and guide you to find reasons to accept and forgive this part of you. And I also want you to ask what else at least 7 times to each question to elicit a deeper answer. Formulate your answers into detailed statements. So let's begin the absolution questions. Question number 1. What past and present behaviours of this archetype have you condemned and rejected as being unworthy? So from present day spanning right back to your childhood, identify the experiences, the situations, the behaviours of this archetype where you feel that you did something wrong, something embarrassing, something traumatizing. So what happened to cause you to reject a part of this archetype, a part of yourself, which then become an unconscious trigger? Question number 2, what negative characteristics of this archetype do you loathe and resent? So I want you to think about where this archetype is causing you to behave in ways that always lead to pain, suffering and misery. Think of the ways that this archetype makes you feel weak, insecure and inferior, whereby each time you think about this particular aspect of this archetype, you immediately feel disappointed, down, disdainful and deeply unsatisfied with this part of yourself. Question number 3, what was the first experience that you began to think and feel that this part of you was unworthy and unacceptable? So with this question, you are looking to recall a memory of the first experience that this part of your archetype was rejected, humiliated and pained by a situation. And I want you to describe in detail the exact event and the interactions that took place. What happened? Who was you with? What was your response? And this first experience could be way, way back into your early childhood. So take the time to explore the past, to figure out the exact first time that this part of you felt unworthy and acceptable. And it's important that you establish that first experience, because from the first experience is when you developed a coping strategy in which became your conditioned response moving forward. And that's what we're going to explore with the next 2 questions. Question number 4, what key decision did you make during that first experience that made you reject this part of you as being unworthy and unacceptable? So the key decision is where you have concluded that because this thing here happened, from now on I will always behave in this way whenever something similar happens in the future. So from that past event that you were rejected, humiliated or traumatized, you made a key decision from that point onwards to behave a certain way to protect yourself from experiencing that type of pain again. And it's linked to the traits of the archetype. So identify what that is for you with this archetype. Question number 5, what key behavioural changes did you make from that first experience that helped you to avoid negative emotions of that experience? So from that key decision, there were certain actions that you took where you modified your behaviour so that you would not have to confront this aspect of your life. These actions made you conceal and hide this part of yourself from others. And what were these behavioural changes? Question number 6, how does that key decision and behavioural change negatively affect you today, and what are the life-limiting consequences that prevent you from moving on? In relation to the archetype, some time ago you made a key decision. This resulted in you changing your characteristics and actions, which may have helped you and safeguarded you back then. But now, this decision and those behavioural changes are now giving you bad results more often than not. They are stopping you from achieving a certain outcome. They are stopping you from moving forward. That key decision and those behavioural changes are no longer appropriate or effective for your life today. Question number 7, how does that key decision and behavioural change positively affect you today, and what are the rewarding consequences that keep you holding on to this way of being? Okay, so the reason that you are not letting go of this aspect of the archetype is because you are being rewarded and compensated by a key decision and behaviour. Either you are receiving something of value and importance, or there is a part of you that's being protected and preferably remains concealed, so that you don't have to do something that could potentially result in some type of painful experience. What is that for you with this archetype? Question number 8, what do you stand to gain, and how does this benefit you to not accept and forgive this part of your life? Give as many answers as you can. Spend some time exploring this question. Go deep and flush out everything. Leave nothing held back. Which then leads us on to question number 9. What do you stand to gain, and how does it benefit you when you do accept and forgive this archetype? Here, go back over your answers from question 7 and reverse them. Flip them. Bring some lightness into the darkness. Find positive in the negative. Think of all the ways that you will ultimately feel relieved, free and unencumbered, both mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually and socially, once you accept and forgive this part of you. Question number 10. Describe in what way your life would dramatically improve for you and your loved ones once you accept, forgive and then let go of this part of your life. Here, I want you to think about how you will have this new lease of life, this renewed energy that will positively affect you and those closest to you. Think about how more rewarding, more intimate and more loving your relationships will be. How does this radically improve the current circumstances of your life? How does it make everything better and easier? Question number 11. How much would you develop as a person once this aspect of your character and behaviour is no longer a factor that holds you back? I want you to describe where you would go, what you would do, and who you would become. What would you achieve? What new ventures and activities would you take on? What would you no longer be afraid of? What kind of desires and dreams would you aim for? How much better will you think and feel as a person? How good will it be to be you, that is free from any anxiety, ill thinking and resentment? What new experiences will you be able to enjoy? Which brings me to the final question. Question number 12. Why is it an absolute must for you to accept, forgive and let go of this part of your life? From the answers that you've compiled so far, and after deep contemplation, put together at least 6 absolute must reasons that you will accept, forgive and let go of the detriments of this archetype, that you feel in your heart of hearts is the right thing to do, and that you know intuitively that once you've made that final decision, you've made the right decision, so that you will feel completely exonerated from this aspect of who you are. Now it's time to move on to the second step of the absolution process, and this is called the beneficial asset. With this second step, you will become the alchemist that turns lead into gold. You will extract a greater wisdom, find a deeper meaning and higher purpose from the negative aspects of this archetype. You will transmute its detrimental liability into a beneficial asset so that it becomes a worthy part of you. The idea is to elevate this archetype as a virtuous and respected part of your consciousness. So let's begin. Now I want you to write in your journal the subtitle, the complementary asset of name of archetype. Now the following transmutation questions that we will go through together will guide you to convert this archetype from a negative to positive aspect of who you are. And remember, as you go through this process, to ask what else at least 7 times to each question to elicit a deeper answer, and formulate your answers into detailed statements. So here we go. How did the behaviours of this archetype save me from being physically and emotionally harmed? So looking back, think of all of the ways, events and situations that this archetype actually shielded and protected you from being hurt or experiencing some type of loss. And this includes even those moments and times that this archetype was doing something immoral, spiteful or shameful. That's because even behind the worst of our behaviours, there is always a positive intention, where even though we are doing it wrong, we are looking to make something right for ourselves. The unconscious you is always trying to help and protect you. So, in what ways has this archetype saved you from harm and done you a good turn? Question number 13. What are or were the beneficial outcomes from the negative experiences of this archetype? So with this question, you need to think a little deeper. First, recount a negative experience that resulted from this archetype's behaviour, where you or someone else suffered a negative consequence. And now think of what you both gained from that experience, because wherever there is a negative, there is a positive right beside it. And even those situations, those events, those experiences where there was a negative outcome for you or someone else, if you look and focus in the right place, you will see the positive aspect. Question number 14. In what ways did or does this archetype help me to cope with life? So again, for better or worse, the actions of this archetype is doing or has done something that helps you, that compensates for a situation that you are perhaps struggling, where you are perhaps ill-equipped, where you are perhaps unknowing of what to do. So think about where there has been something difficult to face and do, and this archetype has helped you to avoid the pain. Think of many ways that this archetype has helped you to cope with life. Question number 15. In what ways was I able to make positive progress in my life as a result of this archetype? Here I want you to think about how this archetype has been a beneficial asset to you, how this archetype has empowered you and given you a sense of courage and conviction, has allowed you to carry on and manage different aspects of your life, where if it weren't for this archetype and its specific traits, well, there's no way that you could perhaps have been standing here today without this archetype's help. Question number 16. What deeper wisdoms have I learned about this archetype, and what foresight and good judgment has this provided me with? So from this resolution game so far, you would have now identified, you would have now gained the self-knowledge to know where you have gone wrong and what you need to do right. What have you now discovered about this archetype that is going to help you moving forward? It's going to give you more clarity and confidence moving forward to think about and make good decisions. Question number 17, what life lessons can I take from the negative aspects of this archetype that will empower and serve me to make better decisions going forward? So you've already identified the key decisions and behaviours that have resulted in the negative parts of this archetype. Now explore the key lessons. What have you learned to do differently that will help you to avoid consequences and instead generate positive results? What new key decisions will implement this change? Question number 18, what positive solutions can I extract from the negative aspect of this archetype that can be utilized as a strength to serve others? So think about where the negative traits of this archetype once caused hurt, friction, dispute, or separation between you and the people that you know and love. Where can the lessons that you've learned from these experiences be something that you can share with others that will perhaps bring you closer together, that can help you rectify and remedy relationships, where you can use your newfound wisdom to advise and teach others how to overcome their problems and make crucial self-improvements? Which leads us nicely onto question number 19. What new knowledge, skills and experiences would help me to develop the inferiorities of this archetype so that it becomes a superior aspect of who I am? So here, you're turning the weaknesses into a strength. You are looking to exalt this part of you with the necessary information and skills that empowers you to become a healer, a teacher, or a guardian towards others that have experienced similar situations to you. Let's begin the third step. The third step is where I want you to create a new soul covenant. The soul covenant is a formal written declaration of absolution. In this final step, you will conclude your inner work by entering a binding agreement with this part of you, with this archetype, that states with absolute conviction that you have found peaceful resolution. The soul covenant is the closure, the agreement between you and this archetype that everything is now resolved, that you are at peace with each other, that you are at peace with this part of yourself. And never underestimate the psychological, esoteric powers of making a written covenant. The written word is a creative expression of consciousness. When writing a formal agreement that has a visceral intention of a loving heart, you will form a spiritual pact that bonds the deeper intelligence of your mind, body and soul on both a psionic and psychological level to the agreeance of your covenant, thus ascending your state of consciousness. To make this process easier for you, I have included a soul covenant template, which you will find is attached to this program as a PDF download. And right now I will walk you through the example of that written covenant. So I would begin the written covenant with the title, My Soul Covenant, the full absolution of name of archetype. Then it starts by saying, I hereby declare that I fully acknowledge, forgive and accept name of archetype as a significant and worthy part of my whole self. I fully understand that this part of me has never been with the malicious intention to cause me or others harmful consequences. Instead, this part of me has always been with the positive intention to keep me protected, safe, affirmed, comforted, and alleviated when confronted with certain aspects of my life. And for this, I am truly grateful. Both I and this archetype do acknowledge that the current arrangements of which we coexisted had inevitably led to negative outcomes that impeded, degraded, and limited the quality of my life. We therefore both agree that these detriments must cease to exist so that we can both evolve into a more loving, mature, intelligent, purposeful, and productive individual. I accept that this archetype will always be a part of me because, and you would insert reasons that you've already identified with. I forgive this archetype for the past actions and current behaviours for reasons that you've already identified. And I let go of this archetype's guilt and punishments, again, for reasons that you've already established in previous exercises. Then you would continue the soul covenant by saying, I formally declare that I accept, forgive, and let go of the archetype's detriments from both the past and present day, that I wholeheartedly love and embrace this part of me. From this day forward, we will form an intimate relationship that works together on the basis of mutual respect, self-care, and compassionate understanding. We will both commit towards new and prosperous ideals that cultivate life-enhancing outcomes. Moving forward with peaceful harmony, both I and this archetype are forever one and the same. And then you would autograph the soul covenant. Now I want you to create your soul covenant for this archetype, and you can innovate the example that I have provided you with using your own style of thinking and writing. Just be sure to write the soul covenant so that it makes absolute sense for you and deeply resonates with your intuitive heart. Begin by writing the first draft of your soul covenant, then spend time to revise and refine the covenant until you are completely satisfied with its finished article and ready to commit to its undertaking. Then produce the final proof on a separate piece of paper. Then think of a personal closing ceremony that signifies the end of what has been and the beginning of something better. Then safekeep the pact that you have made between this part of yourself and you by storing the soul covenant inside your journal or another preferred place. And once done with the soul covenant, you are ready for the fourth step of the absolution process, which is to cultivate wholesome absolution. Now that you have absolved from one archetype, you must take the other archetypes through the three-step process of absolution. By finding absolution with all of the archetypes, you will wipe the psychological slate clean. You will balance your psyche into a wholesome state of atonement, to be at one with the mind. So get started on the process of absolving from all the archetypes. It may take you days, it could take you weeks, it will take whatever time is necessary until you feel in your mind of minds and in your heart of hearts that you are at peace with each part of you. Because there is no greater wealth than a peace of mind. And so now you have completed all of the stages in Module 1 of the Mind Games program, and you're ready for Module 2, where I am going to guide you to master these powerful mind control techniques, these life-transforming mind games that will get you more positive results going and growing forward. I'll see you on the other side in Module 2.